This is West of Everest. I am Grant Benson. Today, not joined by Lee Benson, but very happy to be joined by friend of the pod, co-host of the Through the Keyhole podcast, Brady Trantham. Brady, thank you so much for joining me today. How you doing, man?
Doing well, Grant. Thank you for letting me fill in. I am not Lee Benson, obviously. I'm going to try my best to do as good of a job as Lee does on his own show. So, yeah, Through the Keyhole, you guys do a good job of constantly bringing up my silly thoughts and takes from our group chat. So, hopefully, I don't anger too many of your longtime listeners with like, "Where's Lee at? We don't want this dude on here." So, hopefully, I do a good enough job.
I do think there's quite a bit of crossover here. I think our pods reference each other quite a bit. So we're sort of tethered in the OU podcast cinematic universe, which is pretty fun for me. But I think this is the first time, and of course you've co-hosted West of Everest before. It's been a few years, I think, since you've been on here. But you were with Lee, so this is the very first Grant and Brady joint on West of Everest, which is fun for me. While Lee is hobnobbing with the glitterati in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, this weekend.
Yeah. Field access for your brother for the
I
Alabama-Wisconsin domination game. Is Alabama back? I mean, maybe Lee's a
I
good
don't.
luck charm for the Crimson Tide.
Who knows? I know that Wisconsin is certainly a bad football team, but of course Alabama did what they were supposed to do against them. But this is not an Alabama podcast. This is an Oklahoma football podcast, and Oklahoma played in Philadelphia yesterday morning/afternoon, beating Temple 42-3. It was supposed to be a trap game. It was supposed to be a classic look-ahead letdown spot. At least that was the narrative going into the weekend. And I'm going to start with this. And typically what Lee and I do on the postgame, we do just sort of like a likes and dislikes, and then everything sort of organically happens from there. And so that's what we're going to do here. So I'm just going to start with my very first like of the game. OU bucked the narrative in this game. I think the narrative that it was a classic look-ahead letdown spot was accurate. I mean, it's a cliche in sports, and I think that this game fit into that pretty nicely. And so I will start with, I am very, very pleased that OU bucked the narrative and went in there and thoroughly dominated Temple. That game was not close whatsoever at any point in time.
No, absolutely. And I mean, there are even some observations going into the game I didn't even catch. But one of our listeners on Keyhole tweeted us during the game, or right after the game ended. I didn't know Kirk Herbstreit was calling for a 17-17 tie going into the fourth quarter. So that just as another example of everyone expected after OU beats Michigan, and then looking ahead to Jackson Arnold's return to Norman with Auburn coming to town next week. This is a classic trap game. And look, we even have evidence to support that thought with Brent Venables, because the 2 or 3 games, whatever games you want to consider big games, big wins that Brent Venables has had, OU has fallen down to earth pretty much immediately after those big wins. And I know it's Temple. Temple was 2-0. They did seem to have some momentum and some optimism moving forward under Casey Keeler, and he's a good coach. He's going to prove to be a good coach, I think, at Temple if he's allowed to stay. But I know it's Temple. UCF was bad in 2023, and OU needed basically all those 60 minutes to beat them in Norman after beating Texas. And then, of course, we remember what happened with Kansas and Oklahoma State in those next 2 weeks. So this was a positive step in the right direction, Grant. I mean, you're absolutely right. And in the way that they won. So especially juxtapose it last year with OU's 51-3 or 51-9 win over Temple.
I think it was 3, right? I think it was 3.
Yeah, it was over very quickly. There was a lot more, in my opinion. There was a lot more flash in that game. There was a lot more sexy plays. I mean, the defense forced 6 turnovers. We kind of glossed over at the time that the offense went, 1 of 9 or 1 of 12 on third down. Like, the offense wasn't efficient. They weren't explosive despite the points that they put up on the board. It's because the defense gave them a short field basically five or six times, 5 times, because I think Jaren Kanak had the fumble recovery for a touchdown. So it was kind of a red herring for that team last year. And this game, 42-3, it was just utterly routine. OU was the better team. They came out and stomped on their throats early. They never allowed Temple to have any hope that there was going to, like, that they were going to have a chance in this game. They had 104 total yards. Temple did 40 of them came on 2 plays towards the end of the first half on a drive that they ended up not scoring on. Their only points came off of a John Mateer interception deep in OU territory, and the defense immediately forced a 3-and-out, allowed a field goal. So to me, Grant, the coolest thing was just how routine and boring this dominant win was. That's what good teams do. They don't rely on sexy random interceptions or sexy random plays. They just thoroughly dominate, and that's what OU did yesterday against Temple.
I'm happy that you compare it to last year's game, because I think it's a really good example of how, especially in college football, but football just in general, how the score of a game can be really deceiving a lot of the time. And because last year OU wins by 48 points a season ago, they win by 39 yesterday. But Lee and I got into this podcast right after that game last year, and we were sounding the alarms immediately. We noticed how bad the offense looked, and we were hoping that wasn't a canary in the coal mine, which it ended up being, obviously. But it's totally different this season. I thought that game last year, the margin of victory, I think you could probably attribute to those 6 takeaways and OU's ability to score off of those. No takeaways in this game for OU's defense, but I thought this one was more dominant. Much more dominant. I was kind of going through my rewatch this morning, and we'll kind of get more into our likes here. Just with the defense as a whole, I thought was really, really impressive. And you can caveat it by saying, "Oh, it's Temple, and they just don't really have the personnel to match up," and that's true, obviously. But how many times in the last, I'll just throw out a time period there, in the last 10 or 15 years, has OU gone up against a team that they overmatch physically? I would say that is a majority of games over the last 10 or 15 years, but they're not able to impose their will on teams. Teams are still kind of able to scheme stuff open, still able to run their stuff at times and find holes in OU's defense. I think you can say that happened maybe on 2 or 3 occasions in this game, but every single time that it happened in this game, OU responded and they pushed Temple backwards every single time. Now I'm talking about 3 or so plays where Temple was able maybe to get chunk yardage. But other than that, they were utterly dominated in every single facet. And I think it started up front. The mismatch between Oklahoma's D-line and Temple up front was, I don't know if it was eye-opening, because we saw OU's defensive front dominate Michigan's front last week as well. But this was just a whole other ball game. I mean, this game was over as soon as the ball snapped, as soon as I saw that matchup between OU's D-line and Temple's O-line. There was no chance. And I like to think back to the Lincoln Riley years, because that's when this podcast started, and that's when we first started going. And I think a big part of this, why fans are pretty satisfied with this game, is because if Lincoln Riley was the head coach of this football team, that's a game that they absolutely would have struggled, and they would have given up chunk plays, and they would have given up points. And it's very pleasant to see that was not the case this time around.
No, absolutely. And I mean, that it's easy to say that about like a Lincoln Riley team, because it's leadership, it's top down. The way Lincoln Riley wants to lead a program kind of allows for those types of lapses to occur against inferior opponents. Now, that's not to say that Brent Venables hasn't struggled in his time as a head coach against what we would consider an inferior opponent to what OU is trotting out there from a talent standpoint. But the problems have certainly been different. Now that you're in year 4 of the Brent Venables defensive experience, it's becoming more routine. It's becoming more, you have more confidence to say things like, "Oh yeah, defense travels on the road." 4 years into the Brent Venables experience, we're getting dangerously close to having that as a guarantee, basically week in and week out. The tests are going to get harder. Auburn's going to present a lot of challenges in Norman. Texas, with what they're going through right now, are still going to be talented. They're still going to be presenting a lot of challenges. So it's going to get tougher. But, I mean, you're right. In order to achieve whatever goal you have for this team, whether you're one of those people that thought 8-4 is going to be the ceiling, 9-3 like I predicted in the offseason, or even better than that. In order for OU to get there, they have to dominate teams like Temple. They have to put their best foot forward, because remember, last year with a pretty good defense, I don't think as good as this one that they have out right now, but with a pretty good defense, you guys were sounding the alarm bells after Temple. I waited a week. after the Houston game that should have probably been a loss. That's when I started sounding off the alarm bells on Keyhole. We knew then, even against inferior opponents, that this could be kind of a long season. I'm not getting those same vibes, at least right now, and that's a good thing, because in order to get to where you want to get to, you've got to dominate teams like this, and that's what they did.
Yeah, and just that offense last year. I think now it's just fast forward to this year, and I'm still just sort of. And you know what? I think as of right now, I think OU's offense has, through the first 3 games, has only been just pretty good. It could be a lot better, but man, compared to last season, it is just night and day. Sometimes it's easy to forget just how there was zero hope on the offensive side of the ball last season. I mean, if they got behind the chains, which was a majority of the time, you can pretty much just spike that entire drive into the dirt. Like nothing was ever going to happen. I mean, 3rd and 9 last year may as well have been 3rd and 50. Just wasn't going to happen.
Oh, you had a 3rd and 19 on their first drive, and Mateer stood tall in the pocket, confident. He knew Kanak was going to pop open. He did. OU gets a big chunk play. It's a different world we're living in now, Grant. We can be excited now.
And like I'm glad you brought that play up, because I have it here like in my notes of the game, where it was just how casually they picked up that first down was so nice to see. And I want to go into this just because you brought it up here with I'm starting to get, and I want you to maybe try to throw some cold water on this. I don't know, because I haven't listened to any of the post game stuff in the cinematic universe from yesterday yet at all. But can you throw some cold water on me, because I'm really excited about Jaren Kanak, and this is not to me anymore just like a nice little story. Jaren Kanak is genuinely up there with their best offensive players. He may be. I texted this to Lee yesterday, because he didn't watch a second of the game yesterday. He was off doing other stuff. And so one of my takeaways that I sent with him is that I'm at the point now where I'm just like, Jaren Kanak is not just this nice little story of a converted linebacker. I genuinely think Jaren Kanak might be one of the best tight ends / H-backs in college football. And how did that happen? I have no idea how that happened. What a delight that is.
I mean, I'll play devil's advocate for you, because these are just thoughts that I've had. I have been pleasantly surprised and excited for Jaren Kanak. And really, even if some tougher tasks like present themselves once OU gets into conference play in the SEC with tougher teams, defenses that are better equipped to stop your preferred weapon, John Mateer clearly looks for Jaren Kanak. And if you have a really good quarterback, it can make everybody else better. So maybe Jaren Kanak, like on a random other college football team, probably isn't as valuable or isn't able to showcase his athleticism, because what's not surprising is how fast he is and that he's athletic. Like, we knew that already. The whole point was at 6'2", playing a new position, because even though he played offense in high school, he wasn't playing tight end. I think he was a halfback.
He was a quarterback, I think.
Quarterback, like he was their Austin Box, basically, for down at rest in peace, Austin
R.I.P.
Box. But can he do this at this level with basically an offseason learning a new position? And I mean, we got to say it, even though like we can throw some flowers at him, at least for the performances of Jaren Kanak thus far, with his coaching that he's going to be having that in that one offseason under Joe John Finley. I mean, is that really going to set him up for success? And it absolutely has. If you want some cold water, like the whole point is he going to be able to do this against Texas, Auburn even next week? Is he going to be able to do it against South Carolina on the road? Like that grind of a schedule that OU has kind of peering around the corner as we get closer and closer to conference play. You're going to be playing defenses and linebackers and safeties, nickelbacks that are better equipped, that are fast, that are physical, that can handle like Jaren Kanak just from his size limitation alone. But still, Jaren Kanak is still fast as hell. So he presents a challenge in his own right. It's just going to come down to, can Mateer keep up his, superb quarterback play, clean up some mistakes here and there, and we'll get to that probably a little bit later. Can he do that? If he does, if he's a top 2-3 quarterback in this conference by November, if we understand that, Jaren Kanak's going to be a big benefactor of that. So yeah, like there's potential cold water on the horizon, but he's proven everybody wrong. And so I'm just willing to say, like, throw my hands up in the air and say, even say something silly like this, because I've been saying this on Keyhole. I feel like we're getting dangerously close to a point in late October, early November, where we're going to be sitting here lamenting on our podcast. Man, I wish we could have seen Jaren Kanak play tight end his entire career in college, because what a waste. This is his last year. It'd be a shame, but hey, it's better than nothing.
I'm kind of already there with Kanak about just like, wow, it sucks that he wasn't doing this on day one, because
Yeah.
I think he's that good already. And where I would push back with you, because like your point about the schedule getting tougher and seeing better defenses and more NFL bodies, that's well taken. I do think that that's a factor. But that's where I think that Michigan game is so valuable to have in the back of your head, and that's why I said all offseason that Michigan game to me is going to be very important with my perception of the team moving forward. And I still think Michigan's got a long way to go on offense. I still think against good defenses that Michigan team is very offensively challenged. Having that been said, though, I still think Michigan has a legit top 5, top 10 defense in college football. And I think OU is, just off the top of my head, I think they're going to face about 3 more defenses this year that I think are comparable to Michigan. That would be Texas, Alabama, and LSU. I think everybody else is at the very worst a notch below Michigan in that regard. And I thought there was a lot of guys who looked really good against Michigan on the offensive side of the ball, but at the near the top of that list is Jaren Kanak. Kanak absolutely looked like he belonged on the field with those Michigan guys. And I mean, Michigan's got some athletes on defense now. Michigan has probably 5, 6, 7 NFL draft picks on the defensive side of the ball right now. And Kanak was finding holes in that defense and was making tough catches. He was outrunning guys and bouncing off guys. They really struggled bringing him to the ground. And Michigan played, following up their game last week, and so they played a really clean, dominant game this past week. Where their defense, I think they only gave up like 100 yards of offense, and their offense was humming. They had nearly 700 yards of offense against Central Michigan. So I don't know. I just like I'm at this point, like I'm almost ready to say the sky's the limit for Jaren Kanak, because he's already doing this in only 3 games of experience at this level in that regard, and he already seems comfortable. And we'll get into it more when we talk about our dislikes, but there was OU's drives kind of around like the middle 8 of the game. They were pretty inefficient, and there were some 3 and outs, and they struggled. And the drive that got them over the hump, it was their 3rd drive in the 3rd quarter, I believe. They go to Kanak on a 3rd and long, and Mateer hits them, and they pick up about 25 to get in, close to inside the 10-yard line. And to me, it was just I didn't think it was a coincidence that OU went to Jaren Kanak when they absolutely needed it, and they needed to kind of gain more momentum on the offensive side of the ball. And Kanak was there with a nice explosive. He beat his guy like on an out route. Mateer's throw was perfect, and Kanak did what he's done up to this point in time. He runs after the catch, and he makes it difficult on the defense. And when they bring him down, he forces the defense to take a lick when they bring him down. It costs something bringing that guy down. And with his hands and his speed, I just think he's going to have a game this season where he goes for 10 catches for like 180 yards and a couple of touchdowns. He's going to have a game like that this year. I really do think so. Because and we'll see it like on the Keontae Lewis interception where he was knocked out. If you see kind of like the end zone cam of that play, Kanak was wide open over the middle of the field. That's where Mateer should have gone with the ball on that play. And so I just keep watching. Dude's just open. He gets open. He's got the feel for it, and so it's turned into a man crush for me. And like, if I could talk about Jaren Kanak for an hour on the podcast, I will. We've probably already gone about 15 minutes on him, so I'm fired up about it. But I just kind of want to stick with the offense, just because, like, just to kind of finish up the likes here, because here's one other thing that I liked. They scored on their first 4 possessions of the game. And in a game where we're talking about would they come out flat, would they have an emotional letdown from last week, or looking ahead to Auburn, man, they come out right out of the gates. They looked like they wanted to be there, and that was really important to me. And man, I loved that 2-point call on the first touchdown drive. It's just there was something about that is just like, no, we're coming into this game engaged, and we are here to whoop some tail, and that's what we're doing here. Like I was fired up at that call, and the fact that it was Kanak doing it, of course, with everything. I think that says a lot about the mentality of the team.
No, I mean, I agree, because it's really easy to look at that 2-point conversion and just kind of casually ask, like, why are they doing that against Temple? That's running up the score. Like, are they trying to do something silly? And I kind of looked at it from that standpoint, and from another one as well, kind of a more X's and O's pragmatic way, because now opposing teams have to worry about that. Jaren Kanak can be kind of a gadget type player on the goal line. And I would assume, and maybe I'm completely wrong, I would assume, because I think a big part of Jaren Kanak continuing this dominant play that he's had, it's going to be incumbent upon Ben Arbuckle to layer his play calling. And the great offensive play callers over the last 20, 25 years at OU, they kind of release their offense in stages, especially in their first year. You kind of go through September, you kind of throw some stuff out there to give defenses something to worry about. And then classically, it's like Texas is when you open things up like completely and you do like weird stuff. And because both OU and Texas go into that game with something up their sleeve, because that's the unofficial end of the first half of the season. So you want to come out with that game, not just because it's a rivalry, but because you're looking ahead to the latter half of the season with a lot of optimism and momentum if you come out with a win. So them doing that with Jaren Kanak makes everybody kind of like think about that moving forward. But also, because I assume Ben Arbuckle is going to layer his play calling, he's going to open up slightly, I think, a little bit more than he did against Michigan, against Auburn next week, for instance, and then probably go back into a conservative shell against Kent State because of the talent discrepancy. Then Texas, who knows? Maybe you have Jaren Kanak in the shotgun, and it's just like, what is this? And then Texas is on like suddenly like either calling timeout or not knowing what to do. I'm expecting silly stuff like that because Jaren Kanak has proven to be that talented of a player that you can trust him with the ball in his hands. And I almost kind of think that it was a blessing in disguise that it wasn't his first catch of the year, but the second catch of the year was a fumble. And he kind of got those jitters out early in a safe environment against a team like Illinois State. He gets that out of the way because I haven't really sensed another play where it's like, oh, hold on to the football. Like, it seems like he understands, okay, I used to be the one that hit people. Getting hits different, especially in your first game. It's going to be a different experience. He got that out of the way, and he's just kind of looks like a completely and utterly different weapon moving forward. So that was exciting. But to go back to the original point, yes, OU probably needed to truly like overexert themselves from an aggression standpoint to essentially lay the foundation for, we're a better team. We're going to show you that we're a better team. We're going to extinguish any hope you have, Temple, of doing something very quickly. Because they did the same thing against Michigan. I'm sure Michigan had an idea of how they wanted to attack OU from an offensive standpoint, and they would poke and prod initially, be aggressive here and there, and if it worked, they would then open it up a little bit more. OU's defense was so good that Michigan decided, nope, not going to do that. We're not going to get Bryce Underwood killed because we can accomplish a lot of our goals in the Big Ten. This is not a conference game. We're not going to get him killed against this defense. And I think Temple probably thought the same thing as well because they were very vanilla after their first 2 or 3 drives. They were very vanilla, and in their first 2 games, albeit against very poor competition, they were incredibly unique. They were interesting. Their motions, their formations presented this challenge, and they just understood quickly, cannot do that against this defense. That's a good place to be if you're an OU fan.
It's a great place to be, and so I do want to go back on your point about like kind of putting stuff on tape with the Texas game and everything. I do think that 2-point conversion is like part of the intent there is to give teams in the SEC later on their schedule something to think about, because we now know we're going to see that look again, and it's not going to be the same play. It's going to be something totally different. We know that now. And when they did that, it sort of reminded me of, when Chip Kelly used to be at Oregon, their offense was humming. They did like the 2-point conversion stuff all the time. Like that was their bit. And I always found that to be remarkably annoying, but also, what's the best thing that you can do as an offensive guy? Do what the other guy does not want you to do.
Yeah.
And that was always like, I think it was like crap. They're coming out and they're doing their stupid 2-point conversion crap all the time. And if that's something that you can get good at, I think it's a great little thing to have in your back pocket. I mean, if you have some 2-point conversion plays that you know that you can execute well and practice over and over again, I mean, as long as you get one, that gives you another free opportunity to do it again. And I kind of like that. It makes me wonder if once we get into SEC play, are we going to see stuff like that where it's like, is OU going to start going for two or three times a game, which I think would be really interesting because if you get one of them, then you're playing with house money, and I like that stuff. So, we'll transition to the defense, and there was a lot I think good on the offense too. I thought Torrey Blaylock looked good. I thought Isaiah Satania had his best game of the season so far.
It was a good bounce back for him because
it was.
He had some good plays against Michigan, but the lows were pretty damn low, and he was a big part of why OU didn't really put true belt to ass to Michigan in terms of the score discrepancy. It was a lot of it was on him. He bounced back incredibly well, so that was nice to see.
Yeah, and you bring it up. It seemed like they ran that pop pass quite a bit in this game, and I can see, and that's something that Washington State ran a little bit last year. My assumption is that, and it's the same play. I mean, Deion Burks scored on that in the first drive against Michigan last week, and I think we saw it probably 4 or 5 times in this game, and it kind of seemed like they were creasing Temple pretty good on it every single time. And that I think that's one of their core plays. And if Ben Arbuckle is the guy that we think he is, there's going to be stuff that is built off of those plays for sure. And so I think they block those up pretty well. As well, so I liked those. I'd mentioned Torrey Blaylock. I think he looks nice. I think he's pretty clearly the best running back on this team right now. He just not that I think he's like great or anything. Like we think of true freshmen, and of course Adrian Peterson is at the very very top tier of that. Should have won the Heisman Trophy in 2004. And then I think for true freshmen after that, you have to look at Samaje Perine, who was just terrific as a true freshman in 24. Was their entire offense that season.
Well, Lee's not here, so you can bring up the history, Grant.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's like, we're the two guys who have the encyclopedic knowledge of the 2000s of OU. I mean, you go deeper than that, and so that's all to say that I don't think Torrey Blaylock is on that level, but he's clearly a good player. I mean, he's got a feel for it, and I'm not sure if he's just like this generational great guy, but I think he's a guy who can be really productive for you for sure. And so I don't really have much more thoughts on Torrey Blaylock other than that. We'll get into the other running back stuff when we get into our dislikes. I would assume, but Blaylock is to me RB1. He should be out there a majority of the time, especially if you want to run the ball. He's clearly the guy who is going to make it happen for you. So, did you have any other thoughts on Blaylock that you saw? I mean, I thought he had a nice day.
Yeah, to me, Blaylock's kind of, I don't know. I get the same feeling from Torrey Blaylock that I do from the OU defense, and that they just routinely do their job, and it doesn't always have to be awesome looking. It's just 3rd and 1, they're going to run up the A gap. Nope, not against us. Or, hey, Torrey, we're gonna give you the ball, hit the edge. You're faster than these guys. And he's like, okay. And so he just does that. So it's not super flashy. He's not a physical specimen in terms of DeMarco Murray, Adrian Peterson, that type. But he does present a lot of challenges for a defense because of his shortened size. I mean, I think we can all remember Quentin Griffin. It's hard to see a smaller running back behind a monster offensive line. It's just, you can find some advantages there. And he's got speed and power. He's got power for being a little bit on the smaller end. To break through some arm tackles. I think Brent Venables talked about that in the post game. And I've already seen marketed improvement from him because Illinois State, I think you, me, and Lee were all in our group chat saying, I wish he didn't have to run into people. You seem quick. You seem to have agility. Make a guy miss in the open field. Don't go out there and try to prove that you're some awesome machismo man. Let me just run you over with my shoulder pads. Be smarter than that. And I think he showed that yesterday against Temple, where there was a time where he had to run through somebody. He was on his first touchdown, but it's on the goal line. He doesn't have the angle. You lower that shoulder and punch yourself in. Great. Other plays, he would just run out of bounds. Other plays, he would outrun somebody. I'm like, okay, like we're already seeing from week to week some improvement from a true freshman. So as the offensive line, and I did want to ask you one quick question before we move over to the defense. But as the offensive line gets more cohesion, I think they're in a much higher place than even we anticipated coming into this season, even though we were acknowledging that there is a big question mark with the offensive line, but we feel better about it than we did last year. Where does that start off? We don't know. We'll find out when the season starts. They're in a much better place. As they get more cohesion, there's going to be more opportunities for running backs to really exploit the holes that they're going to be opening up. Torrey is clearly the best one at using his vision, using his power, and using his speed. And clearly, 14 carries, 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, that'll do. That will work. If you get that production, just the fear of that production week in and week out with John Mateer at quarterback and these receivers, I mean, the sky is truly the limit. It's just going to come down to, does OU shoot themselves in the foot or not a dozen times in this game or not? If they don't, it's going to be hard to beat this team. If they do, they'll open the door for you. So that's going to be the problem. But my question, Grant, was, one of the interesting wrinkles of this game, Michael Fasusi was a late scratch. He was wearing a boot. He rolled his ankle against Michigan last week towards the end of the game. He did talk to the media afterwards, said that it was just a rolled ankle, nothing to write home about. And usually if a player is talking to the media, they're fine, like they're able to play. But obviously didn't play at all. Logan Howland switched over to left tackle for him. I believe that was Logan's second start. He started against Illinois State, if I recall correctly.
I think so, yeah. I think he started at right tackle against Illinois State, but then switched over to left when Sexton went down, a few plays into the game, as Jake Sexton is wont to do.
Bless his heart. This might spiderweb into a secondary question. But you have Howland, Ozida, Michaela, the transfer from Stanford, Fabechi Nwiwu, and then Derek Simmons at right tackle. So the first question is, obviously the answer is yes, I'm fine with it because OU did not need Michael Fasusi, but with where OU was last year from an injury standpoint and them cleaning house with the medical staff, them having a new medical staff, and probably having more new messaging to said medical staff about if a dude has a paper cut, he needs to sit down because we're not risking that crap again that we had last year. I wonder if that changes once you get into SEC play. Does Michael Fasusi, if they're playing Auburn, does he play? And so my question to you is do you like this abundance of caution? Because I think you've been very consistent with injuries because I feel the same way. They're random, they're fluky, they're unfortunate. There are ways that you can kind of mitigate them on a person-to-person situational basis. But for the most part, you can't just turn injuries off like it's a video game. So do you like that they're being cautious with players like Michael Fasusi that clearly help OU be a better team?
Well, I think it depends. So for instance, if Fasusi comes out and plays next week against Auburn and he looks otherwise healthy, but he looks just kind of worse than he did against Michigan and just looks like he's struggling to get into the flow of the game, then I may have a different thought about it. But if you can promise me that Michael Fasusi is going to look like he did against Michigan against Auburn, and part of the reason he does is because he was able to give it a week's rest, then I'll be for it. But it depends because I just don't know how hurt he is. And so what I can say though is after watching this game compared to last week, I think Fasusi's pretty clearly their best offensive lineman. And I think by a lot. I mean, he is. And that's not to say that I didn't think the offensive line was bad in this game. I thought blocking up the run, they were pretty below average. But again, I thought they were good in pass protection, which for me as an offensive line is always the number one priority. Don't get your quarterback killed. And even the two kind of thrown together offensive lines we've seen for Illinois State and now Temple has done a pretty good job of protecting Mateer. Not a perfect job, but a pretty good job.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking going back to the Temple game again last week, Jackson Arnold was getting hit in that game left and right by Temple. And it was tough to watch. That wasn't the case this year. So let's revisit that question. Let's try to revisit that question in a couple of weeks because I'm on one end, I'm kind of these guys need to play. They need to be out there. If they're healthy enough to play, go play. But then again, I just don't know how hurt they are.
Yeah.
But I do think though that if Michael Fasusi is if he's available to play, he's got to play against Auburn, because I think against Auburn you're going to see a defensive front that is not quite as good as Michigan's, but it's sort of in the same ballpark, in the same tier, and you're going to need someone like Michael Fasusi, especially if you're going against a guy like Keldrick Falk, who is probably, if you're going to compare Michigan and Auburn, of those like 9 to 10 players that you're going to see on the defensive line, I think Keldrick Falk is probably the best player of all of those guys. So like they're going to need a Fasusi in that regard. So I hope that's what happened in this game. I hope their whole thought process was, hey, let's sit him down. He's going to get 10 to 11 days of genuine rest, and he's not going to be on that ankle that he twisted. And then we can get him through 4 quarters of Auburn. And then it wouldn't surprise me at all to see them sit him down against Kent State again. And then going into or I guess it would be a bye week. And then maybe if he's feeling good, he'll play against Kent State, maybe just like every now and then. But let's say that he does play against Auburn, and then there's the bye week, and then he doesn't play against Kent State. I think you would be able to pretty safely say that they have some sort of plan for him and trying to keep him fresh with everything. But he's not the only one that's banged up. That was kind of the one thing, and I don't want to get into the dislikes. Yeah.
It's a tricky gray area between the thought of rest helps you and getting into rhythm helps you, because you only get better by playing. You don't get better by sitting down. And look, like they know how hurt they are. I mean, the interesting thing that we're going to find out this week, Grant, is it's a conference game, so we will get an injury report. So we will find out about Michael Fasusi. And how much do you want to bet Jaydn Ott's on there?
Ooh, I don't know. I'm not.
Those post-game quotes from Brent about him, that is.
We might as well, let's get into it then. I have it right here. So I want to hat tip to George Stoya, who tweeted this out, but he had the full quote of what Brent Venables said on Jaydn Ott after the game. And like I said, we're gonna kind of scuttle the like and dislike thing. We're just gonna go for grab bag here. So which I knew that's how this was gonna go, and so that's good.
My fault, because I do have one more.
No, it's not.
But go into
but let's get into this, because it's weird. It's obviously a weird thing, because Jaydn Ott got his sure, we'll give you a couple of drives in the fourth quarter thing again, like that happened against Illinois State. Oh, by the way, he started and played the first 2 series, was the only running back, played the first 2 series against Michigan last week, which is weird. But so here's what Venables said on Jaydn Ott. This is the full quote in the post-game presser. He said, "You wish he was a little further along in every way, but you get in there, whatever opportunities you have, you get in there, you're ready. You got good juice, energy, and aggressiveness. Having an attack mindset, all of those things. Everything adds up. Everything matters. So we'd love to get him going. If all things are good in that regard, his instincts, his speed, all those things, he can be a real weapon." And so I don't know how you take that. Like, I don't necessarily take that as this guy's injured. I take that quote as this guy is not who we thought he was, and we really would like him to be who we thought he was.
Well, I see that as purely mindset. With when I kind of quipped that, how much do you want to bet he's going to be on the injury report? I wouldn't be shocked if he's dealing with something, but that something is causing him to not be aggressive, to not practice hard, to not take those few opportunities that he gets randomly in games, whether it's at the beginning or he's essentially turned into OU's human victory cigar. If Jaydn Ott's on the field, it's over. It is beyond over. Abandon all hope if you're OU's opponent, if you see Jaydn Ott. I just purely read that as he is good enough. We know he is. He is healthy enough. That doesn't mean he's 100% healthy. Doesn't mean he's 100% injured. He is healthy enough to go out there and be the guy that we know him to be, but it's clearly all between the ears with him. It is a mindset.
I think,
it is, and that's utterly disappointing. And I feel for him in the way like that we know his story. I mean, I think Lee talked about it back in the offseason in fall camp when they had media day, and he went over how he was essentially told by Cal, their medical staff, that you're good enough to go, and he wanted to be a good team player and go out there and be out there for his team, and it clearly hampered him even more, made him more injured, and it frankly kept him from getting drafted, or is drafted as highly as he probably should be if you go back to his 2023 tape. So he looks at this opportunity and goes, I need to go to a place like OU that will set me up for success, that will allow me to look awesome while I'm doing that. And then I can go back to getting drafted fairly high in the NFL draft. And so the first instance that he has like fall camp with OU, he gets banged up and he's probably thinking like, I can't do that again. I don't want to go through last year. So it's all in his head. And that is frustrating because that can be interpreted as just not being a team guy. And in this NIL era where you get paid hundreds, if not $1 million to play football and you're not going out there and doing it, it's going to lead to, dorks like you and me getting on our podcast, or people getting on the radio, whatever it might be, and saying critical things. And we're never going to know, because this is college football, what's going on. But that quote was about as transparent as you're going to get from a head coach about the status of a player, Grant. It basically made me think, if he becomes something this year, it will be random. I am assuming he's not going to be anything for this team. So you ride with Torrey Blaylock. I'm also kind of excited that Xavier Robinson got some opportunities and did some stuff with that. That will be good because we know how good he can be. We know Javonte Barnes is going to factor in to this offense. We like his pass blocking. He did well against Michigan, so good for him. So, OU's got 1.5 backs I feel very confident about right now. Jaydn Ott is nowhere near to being one of them.
I agree. And I'm very disappointed. I was a huge proponent of the Jaydn Ott signing, and I thought it would really pay dividends this year. Because to me, to explain his last season, it's very easy to say, yeah, like I was hurt for majority of the year, and like especially when you have like a relatively serious like foot or ankle sprain or something like that. Yeah, you're not going to be 100%, and that's going up against running behind a pretty bad offensive line like Cal had last year. Like that can really explain his lack of explosion in numbers a season ago. So I thought an offseason of being healthy, he's going to come into a much more defined offensive system. He's got a quarterback who's a running threat, and you were hoping that the threats on the outside would open everything up for him. But I whether it's physical, mental, and I think there is a mental component to this for sure, because his body language is not good. It seems to be he just doesn't really want to be out there. And so that's why I have to give a hat tip to my brother, because he was one of the few who was saying it, and he was weary. He was like, maybe last year and his unproductive nature from a season ago is a big red flag, and maybe this guy is washed, and we didn't. And so I don't know what that is. I hope it's a mental thing that he just needs to get over the course of this season. But I think as of right now, I think it's the theory that he's washed. I think we're much closer to that being true than the other thing, which is really disappointing, because I think OU did pay a lot of money for him in the transfer portal, and you would hope that those investments pay dividends. This one is not so far, but I'm kind of with you right now. I'm off the Jaydn Ott is not going to be a thing this season. He's not, and that's disappointing to me. And if you would have told me that that's where this was going to go before the season started, I would have kind of sounded the alarms like, oh gosh, this on the offensive side of the ball, I think this is going to be more disappointing than we think. I think the emergence of Jaren Kanak has made that a lot easier to swallow, and because that's just an X factor that we weren't expecting at all. That's made this offense a lot better. So with Ott, I think you just roll with it. It's Blaylock and Barnes are the two guys on this team, and I hope they can get Xavier Robinson going. I don't think Taylor Tatum is going to be a thing this season, but it would be nice if he was, because when he wasn't fumbling last year, it did look like he had some juice at times.
He's still limping around. Like I saw a few shots of him on the sideline walking with a noticeable limp. So who knows? Taylor Tatum's in the same lot as Jaydn Ott with me. In terms of I don't expect them to really do much for this team this year. The only difference is we're probably going to see Jaydn Ott on the field to justify some of that NIL money they paid him to, like, please try and make this work. But yeah, it doesn't seem like it's in the cards. Let's do real quick. Let's do a hot take thing, because we're on a podcast. So let's do a silly hot take thing. Does Jaydn Ott finish the season as an Oklahoma Sooner?
I was thinking about that yesterday. Honestly,
I can already see the graphic. Can already see it.
I think there's a very, very real chance that we see him against Auburn in kind of the same way that we saw him against Illinois State and Temple. And then we get the little Twitter notification on Monday morning saying Jaydn Ott is going to redshirt and enter the transfer portal. It wouldn't surprise me at all if we saw that.
And I hope that's not the case. Like,
Yeah, me too.
absolutely. I don't want that to be the case at all. And if he's dealing with something, then I hope he can get through it just on a personal standpoint. But when you're all you can go by are what the coaches tell us. And when you have Ben Arbuckle talking about, like, he gets asked about the status of Jaydn Ott 2 weeks ago, and the first thing he says is headspace. Okay, well, that gives me a different impression than what I was expecting. And then you have Brent say the thing that he said yesterday after the Temple game. It gives me this impression that this is not going in a positive direction. And I hope that he's going to prove my initial thoughts wrong. I don't know, but we can only go by what we're told. So that's why my mind goes that silly direction. It's mostly a silly thought.
No, I think it's fair. I thought about it yesterday too. Like I can see the press release in my head, and because it's weird. I mean, this was such a high profile thing. You assume that he is just the number one automatic bell cow back on this team, and we know he banged up his shoulder in fall camp, but it was always thought to be not serious, and he's been out there playing, and frankly, I mean, for a running back, a shoulder, I don't think that should limit you that much in that regard. I mean, Torrey Blaylock's got a shoulder, and he's out there and he looks like Torrey Blaylock. So, we'll see with him. But I'm really not expecting anything at all. And which, gosh, it's such a disappointment because I'm just like going back and watching his stuff from 2023 and then the year before that, and he had some highlights a season ago too, especially against Miami. When they came and played at Cal a season ago. But I think to me it would just be a real shame that we don't get to see him in the open field, because when he's hitting home runs, I mean, like he's like a long strider. Like, I mean, he's a guy who has very long strides, and when you see him in the open field, like running away from guys, it's just like it's aesthetically pleasing. It's fun to watch.
Yeah.
And we have not seen him be able to even be put in a situation like that. But I don't know. I mean, I really do think that there's something going on that we don't know about. But also, like, the cynical side of me, if we're going on hot takes right now, also makes me think, what if he got here in June and what if him and DeMarco Murray are just oil and water? And he's just here and he's just like, I'm miserable because I hate this
Preaching
guy.
to the choir on that one.
Like, what if that's the case? What if it's just not working because DeMarco Murray is such a hard ass and Jaydn Ott is just like, I just can't deal with this guy and I hate it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give some credit to DeMarco Murray real quick, because you and I have you were on it first. I was willing to believe a little bit more, but then it just got to a point where I'm like, yeah, Grant's right about DeMarco Murray. So, like, we're the very critical DeMarco Murray podcasters, I guess. But one of our listeners at Keyhole hit me up on Twitter yesterday and asked, like, is the Jaydn Ott thing, you think, due to DeMarco Murray? So essentially what you just talked about. And my answer was, I'm actually not going to blame DeMarco for this one, because he's actually been fairly good this year. He's been on his best behavior in terms of Torrey Blaylock's clearly the best player, so let's give him more opportunities. I'm sure he really loved the Michigan game because Javonte Barnes had some really nice plays, so he was able to play him probably a little bit more than they were expecting. And also, it's very clear that with Ben Arbuckle running the show on offense and it basically not being Jeff Lebby, they're making better personnel decisions because they're not always going a million miles an hour. And then let's call a trick play on this play. But we have a true freshman running back who hasn't played all year, like, out there, or it was Javonte Barnes. He's not played all year at the 2023 game against Oklahoma State. He's barely played all year, but it doesn't matter. Let's go fast and then run a trick play, and then he fumbles because he's not been out there that much. That's not been the case, and it's allowed for DeMarco Murray to play like probably the best back that particular day. I don't want to believe that it's a DeMarco Murray problem, because he's been pretty good this year. But that's a personality thing that we don't know. We do have context clues of DeMarco Murray's a very demanding coach. He's very hard-nosed and old school. He values, like, the non-flashy things from the position, so pass blocking, running routes, because it's DeMarco Murray. He was a versatile back in his own right. So if you're a versatile back who's not afraid of physicality, you will play under him. And maybe Jaydn Ott playing a little bit tentative, and this is just me guessing because I don't watch them practice, but when I know that he's wary from a previous injury, kind of kind of regrets his decision to play and making it worse. And then we know he got injured in fall camp, and we're seeing what we see and what limited opportunities he's had. I just then use my brain and say he's probably not practicing hard. He's probably playing very conservative, and that's probably pissing them all off because they know he's better than that. And that would be very, like, if I'm a coach, that would frustrate me too.
I think it's very reasonable to suspect that that's what's going on because I mean that's essentially if you pair the Ben Arbuckle headspace stuff from a couple of weeks ago and then pair that with Brent Venable's comment after the game yesterday, I think that's a really fair conclusion to draw that it's totally between the eyes for him right now, which is it's unfortunate, but also I think it's one of those things now with the era that we're in college football. That's something that's going to be popping up a lot more lately. OU is not the only team that's paid a guy a lot of money and they don't like the results from it. Like that's going to keep happening. And I think one of the things that's helping out OU is that some of the guys that they sort of moneyballed, and I'm thinking of like Keontez Lewis is the number one like example in my head that's looking like it's working out right now. Them
Hopefully
them
he's okay.
Yeah, oh yeah, we haven't even gotten into that. In
a
part.
game where everybody who had their head sniffed by an opposing player, let's review those plays. They didn't review that one. I'm still like, what? he's motionless on the field, but let's not review it. It probably wasn't targeting because it was incidental contact. They ran into it. The guy played the ball, but it was just very confusing that happened.
St. Louis, Illinois.
I don't know. My thing on this, and you'll see it there. The replay is about to come up here, but I'm not positive that this was targeting. I really don't think it was.
No, I don't think it was. I think that it's incidental contact. I also didn't think R. Mason Thomas was targeting. I thought that was incidental contact. He did.
Although I mean that angle right there, it does. I mean he's clearly taken a shot to the head. I thought a majority of the shot was to his shoulder, but he clearly got it there. So I probably wouldn't have called targeting there even upon review, but it's curious for sure they didn't even look at it. It's a guy who is clearly kind of knocked silly, who is down for a while, and typically that's like always a buzz to look at it for targeting. And so I understand people being upset with it, in that regard, but I don't necessarily think it was.
They had time. The booth had time to look at it themselves, and they probably just deduced that we don't need to review.
Maybe that's what it was. But like, and the people saying like, oh, they looked at the Jaydn Hardy one in the first half, which was, that wasn't targeting. But also, I mean, he did lower his head, and the crown of his helmet was going there, I think. But you looked at the angles, and the guy. There was really no blow there, like at all, that the guy took.
It's silly to me because I feel like targeting is very apparent that it's like when it happens. More than half the time, what's going on is the ball carrier is bracing themselves for contact, and the defensive player is getting their body ready to deal contact. And unfortunately, sometimes that can result in them hitting head to head or a shoulder into the head. Like it's a violent blood sport. So it's going to happen. But you can clearly tell when someone is hitting with violent intent in an unsafe way, and how it's never just essentially called in that fashion just astounds me. And I get it. It's different conferences, different officiating crews. OU's had back-to-back weeks with some pretty clown show officiating crews, with the Big Ten's crew in the Michigan game, and then this one where they reviewed basically everything except for the Keontez Lewis play. I don't know. It's very apparent to me when it's targeting. And even the R. Mason Thomas one is, like, I get it, but he throws the ball, his body turns, and then his head's right there. R. Mason Thomas, like, targeting implies intent. His head wasn't where he was going when he launched. So he's going to be suspended for the first half. I'm not trying to sit here and say that he shouldn't, but I'm just saying that that's not targeting. I'm sorry. It's just not.
This is where I'm going to have to push back on you. I think that's pretty obviously by the letter of the law targeting. This is actually a very similar hit to what got Jayshawn Barham ejected against New Mexico in week 1. They're really similar where you're right. I don't think there was intent at all there, but I also don't think intent is part of the rule. And
That's what the on-air official, like in the broadcast, was always bringing up. There's always three things, and one of them was intent, which I'm like, how can you tell? But I guess you can kind of tell due to body language. He's playing the ball, and yeah, he runs into his head, but it's because he turns his body as he throws the ball. Like that's always the crux with me is by the time a defensive player has engaged into making the tackle or making the hit, the offensive player is still like moving. And if their head ends up in the wrong place at the wrong time, that's not the defensive player's fault. Like you're asking guys that can run 4.4s, 4.5s that are 250 pounds to slow down and be mindful that their head might be in the way. Like that's unrealistic.
I do agree with that to an extent. My thing though in this day and age, 2025 in football, I think we should all be conditioned to know now that if you hit a quarterback high, that you're making yourself available for that flag to be thrown and for that. And so,
and you'd want him to be smarter than that. Like our Mason Thomas, you've played a lot of football. You need to be smarter than that.
Exactly. And so like this is a situation too, where if you go back and you watch the play live, it looks way more violent when you slow it down like that. And that's one of my big things about replay and everything like that. Like, what are we doing here when you have to slow stuff down to a tenth of a second to see all of it? It's like, what are we doing? Like, is this, what's the line here? And so, but also like I'm mostly just upset that like if you're R. Mason Thomas there, all you got to do is just do a regular form tackle and you're good. But as soon as you make contact with the quarterback's head, I think you're going to be in danger there. And so I think it sucks.
I get why. I think he has 2 or 3 PBUs already this season, so he has the ability to affect the quarterback without just hitting him. Like he can.
And he affected it on that play too. That was an incomplete pass. Like that was going to get them. I can't remember what the down and distance was, but I thought that was getting them off the field in that situation. And so,
will it matter? Will it matter next week when you play a running back that plays quarterback?
Yeah, you and I were going back and forth with this over text, whereas I'm like more. But also, I should give you because like your take that has stuck in my craw the most over the last year or so. We talked about this yesterday, where your Arch Manning takes, where I was just like, man, all of the OU fans who are just assuming that Arch is going to be bad is like actually going to look like he kind of did in his high school highlights against the really bad competition in Louisiana. In my head, that was always projection of OU just struck out on their big time 5-star quarterback. And so OU fans are projecting onto Texas. That's going to happen to them too. And I was just like, I don't know. Sark has a really good track record with quarterbacks, and there were times last year I thought Arch Manning looked really, really talented and had like a lot of ability. He doesn't this year.
He's got a Jackson Arnold like trajectory right now. Because remember how awesome Jackson looked under Jeff Levy in spot duty? Looked like a confident quarterback, stood tall in the pocket.
That's true. He did
balls on a dime, like right on a line, like just. He looked like, oh yeah, this is the future of Oklahoma football. And then he got handed the reins, and it's different. It's simply different when you are the guy at a place like OU or a place like Texas, Alabama, like you named the blue blood school. It is different when it's you. And it's not for the faint of heart. And Arch Manning could still prove to be good. And OU could kick his ass in the Cotton Bowl, like from a physical standpoint, and Texas can still win the game, because OU might shoot themselves in the foot, or Texas is also just still very talented. So I'm actually kind of mad at myself for not going harder in the paint on Arch Manning in the offseason, because I did always hedge it with, I think he's going to be good, but he's not the best recruit of all time. Like, please stop with this nonsense, because if he was, go back and look at the other 3 or 4 best recruits of all time from a recruiting standpoint, whatever you want. All those dudes played as freshmen. All of them did. And they were NFL ready. Maybe Adrian Peterson is probably the only true 18-year-old who he could play in the NFL right now. From a physical standpoint, he is capable of doing it. Arch Manning was not that guy, and I know that they did a very good job of like really hyping how mature he is because he sat behind Quinn Ewers and blah, blah, blah. And I said, well,
I bought into that.
I thought about it from if I'm a Texas fan, the way that I watch OU, if I'm a Texas fan in that same way, The way I would look at it is you can't have it both ways. You can't praise his ability to be mature and be okay with sitting on the bench, but also have a quarterback in Quinn Ewers who is very good, but clearly he is not good enough to get you over that hump. If Texas loses to OU in a few weeks, you do realize that means that in the last 3 or 4 years, they've lost, I think, 6 games to 4 teams. Washington twice, Ohio State twice, Oklahoma twice, and Georgia twice. And if you look at the rest of their schedule in that same time period, they have essentially beaten the teams that they are clearly better than, and that includes OU. They have essentially only beaten the bad teams on their schedule and lost to any team that can punch back. And to me, that means, especially when you have an offensive coach and a quarterback-driven system, you need to have a quarterback that can beat the Georgias and the Ohio States and the Oklahomas when they are healthy and capable of beating you. You need to have a quarterback make plays. Quinn Ewers couldn't do that. So if Arch is supposed to be the best recruit of all time,
except in 23 when he's on the road at Alabama, Quinn was pretty terrific in that game. But that was also in Alabama. That wasn't fully formed Alabama yet in that point in the season.
Yeah, I think I made that point too. It's like credit to them for beating Alabama, but that team definitely became something different after that game. So whatever. Yeah. But I guess chalk it up to me being wrong. But
you were not wrong. You at this point you are not wrong about Arch Manning, and this will be kind of my last thought on Arch right now. But I just want to say, from the perspective of an OU guy and someone who really did expect Arch to be really good, and it mostly had to do with my faith in Sarkisian as a quarterback developer. That's where a lot of that was coming from. I saw the same high school clips everyone else did on Arch Manning, and they weren't impressive. But like I always said, Nick Saban was also recruiting Arch Manning, and teams are not in the business of just gassing someone up. But so from that perspective, I will say Arch Manning genuinely sucking is so delightful. Just what a pleasant surprise from an OU fan's perspective. I mean, it is just something that you really love to see. It's a wonderful story that has blown up in their faces, and it could not happen to a better program / fan base. It's something that I'm just so delighted has turned out to be the case, and I hope it's real. I hope it's like one of those things where he is fully healthy and he just stinks. That's to me. Yeah. That's just wonderful.
His lackadaisical play is not the product of being injured. I've seen some of those highlights too, where he's clearly grimacing. So he's probably dealing with something, but a lot of it is just very poor decision making and him trying to force it, him trying to make something work that won't work. Like that's just, I'm not ready for this. And again, he could still become good because you're right. Sarkisian runs a very good system and he helps his quarterbacks out. I've got cousins that are Texas fans that have been texting me the last few weeks, and they'll ask me like, what do you think about Sarkisian? And I've always felt like with Sark, he is, I think in the beginning when he got hired, I'm like, okay, so they hired Diet Coke Lincoln Riley. It's a weird nuance. I think Sarkisian's clearly a better head coach in terms of his ability to hire a staff and his ability to lead like the culture of a program. I think Sark knocks it out of the park compared to Lincoln Riley.
His Pete Kwiatkowski hire is clearly maybe the hire of college football in the last 5 years.
And if I'm going to be fair, in Lincoln Riley's defense, Sarkisian's been a head coach at the Power 5, Power 4 level at other places, so he has a much bigger Rolodex of people he can go to, and plus he was at Alabama, so he had like Saban assistants that he could pull from, whereas Lincoln Riley became a head coach at OU, and all he knows is Texas Tech and what people at OU that he was able to take with him. He doesn't have a big coaching Rolodex he can pull from compared to Sarkisian. Sark's a better program leader. Lincoln Riley is a better offensive mind than Sarkisian, in my opinion. Because the problem with Sark is he holds his quarterback's hands so much that it allows for the situation of, if you're going to do that 90% of the time, but then you randomly go up against Georgia or OU in 2023 and go, Quinn, save us. He has no evidence to support the thought that he can save the day because everything's been laid out for him. If you coddle somebody and then release them out into the wolves, like they're not going to be prepared. And that's how I've kind of seen his development style from a quarterback standpoint is he does not prepare them at all for hurdles, for disadvantages. Quinn Ewers always looked out of place. Arch Manning's looked out of place. And that kind of goes back to Sark and his coaching style when it comes to quarterbacks. So if they're going to beat Auburn, they're going to beat Kent State, go into the Cotton Bowl, they're going to be hungry to lay a hurting down on Arch Manning. And I don't know if Sark is necessarily prepared for that type of attack because he's proven to not be ready for that type of attack when he's played teams that are capable.
See, this is why I love that it's you and I on this right now, because I love we just have like an impromptu discussion on Texas where we're trashing them, which is fun. I like doing that. And that's that's so different than when like Lee is on here, because Lee is just genuinely not interested in any other programs. He's just like, let's focus on this, let's do this. And I'm just like, man, half of the fun of college football is hating your rivals, and that's one of the things that he's just never really understood. And this is why it's like Texas potentially sucking is just so wonderful. It's just so great for the sport and this guy's like heart and brain. And
think about it from an OU standpoint. That this is such a pivotal year for this program. If it doesn't work, and it could prove to not work, OU is not out of the shadow.
Yeah, 9 games left, and they're 9 games left, and eight of them are against good to great teams.
Yeah. If it doesn't work out, Brent's going to get fired more than likely. If they truly go south, Brent will probably be fired. You probably lose Ben Arbuckle. You lose players. While Texas has, even though they're kind of going through a little bit of a rut right now, but they're clearly at a higher level than OU is right now from a recruiting standpoint, development standpoint, all those things. If OU stumbles even further down while their chief rival is continuing to be like in the upper echelon of the sport, that's not a good thing. So if this does work out, if OU does go 8-4, 9-3, 10-2 or better, which we're all hoping for, if that happens and Texas starts to stumble, OU is just going to be able to completely and utterly rebound some momentum that they've lost utterly to a team like Texas. Even though, they get Michael Fasusi over him, they've won some recruiting battles over Texas, they've maintained the ship, even though it's had multiple holes in it and taking on water, but they've not sunk just yet. So this is a very pivotal year, and it coinciding with Texas maybe realizing Arch ain't that guy, and this could go south pretty quick. It's a pretty good thing for OU. So it helps out OU. I understand like worrying about yourself, and don't be an OSU fan where your entire life is just OU must suck more so than OSU be good. That stereotypical view. I understand that, but Texas is good enough that even when they're bad, if OU beats them, it's a good win. Like
absolutely.
I respect them in that from that standpoint.
And these programs hate each other, and these fans hate each other, and that's great. I mean, that's what makes college football fun. But OU and Texas are always going to be tied at the hip, and there's no way of getting around it. I'm sure some would disagree with this, but I think a lot would agree also. Texas has the highest ceiling of any program in this sport. And the fact that OU since World War II has consistently kind of shoved them in a locker and has achieved at a higher level more consistently is a point of pride for someone like, I know you're a big fan of the history of the sport, and I am too. And that's a point of pride that I would like to maintain. I would really, really like to maintain that, because that, whether my co-host typically likes it or not, that's a big part of this sport. And so it's just fun for me. And that's all, that was all. I'm glad you brought up the recruiting wins, the Michael Fasusi and the Jaydn Jackson recruiting win too. Because they beat Texas for him as well. Michael Fasusi
for the next freshman class.
Fasusi is OU's best offensive lineman already. We've seen him play one game, and I think we can already say that that's the case. Jaydn Jackson is, I think R. Mason Thomas is still their best player on defense. I think Jaydn Jackson is probably their second best player on defense. As a true sophomore,
yesterday he only had 12 snaps yesterday, which that's another big win for this defense in that game. You've got guys, and I'm sorry to cut in, but you've like Reggie Powers played 46. Marvin Jones.
Reggie Powers was awesome yesterday.
Marvin Jones played 37 snaps. Boganowski played 34. Devon Jordan played 30. And then everybody else played 20 snaps.
Love it.
Not only does Brent Venables rotate guys, but they were able to just dominate Temple so much that they didn't have to play that much. That's exactly where you want to be.
I find it super interesting, and we're transitioning back into OU talk. And of course, like I want to kind of put a bow on. We just spent about 15 minutes talking about Arch in Texas, and all of that was we teed that up because I was going to say I actually think it's a pretty big deal that R. Mason Thomas is not playing the first half against Auburn. I was trying to say that I disagreed with you on your Arch takes. But also, like, you're talking about how Jackson, like, this isn't that big of a deal because they just have a running back at quarterback. And my thought was just like, don't. I was like, to me, that feels like we're setting ourselves up for like quite a bit of disappointment. But you never know. I mean, they're going to have a good plan against Auburn. I think they're still going to be prepared. And who knows? Maybe R. Mason Thomas wins some sort of appeal next week too. But I do want to go. Let's get into the defense a little bit. Just like very, very briefly before we try to get into I think we're going to punt the 3-word reviews to our midweek show again. That's always a good way to get discussions going. But I'm glad you brought up Reggie Powers. I thought he was great. I thought he, they sent him on that blitz off the edge quite a bit in this game, and it was effective virtually every single time. And if you replace, like, you put him in the same jerseys numbers, I mean, he looked like Kendall Dolby blitzing from the nickel spot a season ago. That's what he looked like.
Played yesterday. He
Who
just
played.
And I didn't know that until I got on the radio to do the post-game
Corner
show
played
for
at corner.
Franchise. I had
He
no
started
idea
at
he was
corner.
out there. Because every time I saw like 13, I just assumed it was Reggie Powers. And I'm like, oh, Kendall Dolby's back, which thank God I said Kendall Dolby, because on No Cap Recap on Keyhole, I kept saying Kendall Daniels. It is just in my head. I cannot get past it. But
Do you have the snap counts? How much? Because on my rewatch, I didn't notice Kendall Daniels a lot. I don't know if he played a whole lot in that game.
He played 12 snaps.
Okay, so that was.
Here are the guys that played less than 20 snaps: Marcus Strong, James Nesta, Taylor Heim, Jaden Jackson, Kendall Daniels, Omarion Robinson, Trent Wilson, Wyatt Gilmore, and Nigel Smith.
Hey, how about Wyatt Gilmore with a strip sack in the game, a Minnesota Preps product. So I will throw that out there. He's a guy who, when OU was recruiting him, I was like, I don't know if I'd be going after Minnesota Preps guys. But
Minnesota win last night. I fell asleep.
They did not. They got they lost 27-14. They were not particularly impressive in that game. What I will say, Cal's quarterback is a freaking baller. That guy is that guy is going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft in 2 years. He is awesome.
I was doom casting in the offseason. I'm like, hey, if Ben Arbuckle and John Mateer are as good as we hope that they are, I mean, John Mateer might be here for a year. I kind of said the same thing about Ben Arbuckle. I'm less of that belief. Like, he's too young. I don't think anyone's going to throw a big Power 4 gig at a 30-year-old. I mean, I think that'd be.
Oh yeah, Arbuckle's.
But,
I think Art. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, but if this does work and OU's really good, I think that just throttles OU back into the top 2 or 3 schools as a potential transfer portal for a quarterback landing spot. So if John Mateer does leave and go to the draft, it's like, oh, Bo Bentley's going to be a true freshman, and I don't know how we feel about Michael Hawkins running the show just yet.
I thought Michael Hawkins looked like Michael Hawkins from last year as he was running.
Yeah.
So a guy who can run, but when you ask him to throw, he's quite poor to bad, unfortunately.
And I like Michael, and I didn't see anything yesterday, but I don't know what you're supposed to see in mop-up duty, but oh well.
But yeah, like on that, I think if Mateer leaves after this year, that means that he had a pretty special season. And I think if Mateer has a special season, OU, I think at the very least, is going to be a playoff team. And like I'm getting to the point now because we were just talking about the defense, and I know this was just Temple, but Lee and I got on here midweek and we both said, like, from what we watched from Temple, it's like, they played 2 bad teams to start, but they did exactly what they were supposed to do on the offensive side of the ball. They were explosive. They moved the ball easily against those 2 teams. And so we thought like it was going to be a schematic challenge for OU's defense coming into this. And OU's physicality and their physical advantage completely neutralized any sort of X's and O's, anything that Temple had in that game. And that was just like, that was great to see. And of course, like, now I'm rambling and I've already forgotten my usual point. Please save me.
Let me throw something at you. So just to hammer home how good this defense has been thus far, Because one other thing I've just started doing a few days ago is I am contributing for Sooners on SI with Ryan Chapman and John Hoover, Carson Field. Ryan Aber is also contributing, so that's pretty fun, but I'm getting back into a little bit of sports writing. So whenever I am not crazy Keyhole guy, and I'm trying to be good little journalist guy, I found out things like this, and I'm sure you might have already pinpointed this. It was just kind of eye-opening to me because it's something I felt, but when I saw the evidence, it really hammered home how good this defense has been. So against Temple, they held the Owls to 3 of 16 on third down. Do you know off the top of your head what OU's defense has done to their first 3 opponents on third down this entire season?
Off the top of my head, no, but I know that it's been extremely good. They're getting teams off
7 of 41
the field on
third down. 7 of 41. You get into
And
third down on this defense, knowing full well Auburn's going to be challenging, Texas, blah, 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 blah. You get to third down on this defense. I mean, Grant, 10 years ago, we knew third and long, oh crap, they got us right where they want us. Like here comes the back-breaking 20-yard play to the third string tight end that can't run faster than a 5.2. We knew it was coming. Now you get in a third down against this defense, you're probably going to send out that punter, aren't you?
Yep. And that's the nice thing is because this is, and I loved how much they heated up Temple yesterday. I mean, they were blitzing Simon like crazy. And the best part about that is like when you blitz, you better get home. And they're getting home every single time. And it was fun to see. So it's like you pair that with, I think, a pretty good organic pass rush that you have with your front four. But some of these guys, like some of the speed that they're coming off the edge for is really fun to watch. And that's like, I think, looking ahead to Auburn, because you and I aren't going to be able to speak on a podcast, before the Auburn game. But I think that's going to be a big thing, just like with how good this team has been at stopping the run on early downs, forcing third and longs. That's where you tee off on Jackson Arnold. And that's where you start to have fun. And I'd assume that OU is probably going to have a spy on him a vast majority of the time. So it wouldn't surprise me if, like on third and long, you see OU only bringing 4 or 5 guys most of the time, and then there's going to be someone kind of hanging back to spy Arnold, probably is what I would guess, because I think that's probably going to be Auburn's really only hope, like in 3rd and 9 or longer, is that OU just kind of gets out of their rush lanes a little bit too aggressively, and Arnold's able to step up and scramble. Because other than that, like we've seen Jackson Arnold. He's gonna see a lot of.
So is this defense.
Yes, he's gonna see a lot of funky looks on passing downs, and unless Jackson Arnold has made an incredible jump, and I haven't really watched any Auburn outside of their first week, where Jackson had a great game running the ball, but he in a lot of ways he just looked like Jackson Arnold throwing the ball.
He's not asked to throw that much, and when he does, they're just simple go routes. There's not a lot of processing, and I mean, because that's what we know about him. I'll throw, I guess, a monkey wrench into this, because as much talk, and deservingly so, as the Jackson Arnold coming back to OU to play the Sooners topic is going to get, I actually think this is going to be a big game for Hugh Freeze, because they had already lost to Cal last year by the time OU went to Auburn to play them, and then OU wins. That OU loss is what truly doomed their season, and which is why Hugh Freeze finds himself in such a hot seat season this year. Was tracing it back to that loss to OU that a lot of people felt like Auburn just choked away, even though in my opinion it's like, no, OU took it from them. They did not like catch a ball, like an interception that was tipped up in the air by a wide open wide receiver, and then it just fell into Kip Lewis's hands, and he's like, oh, let me go score a touchdown now. OU took it from them. This is going to be big for Hugh Freeze. I think he's smart enough, because I think he's not a very good head coach, but he's clearly a good offensive mind in college. He's going to look at this and go, I can't just run at these guys. That's what they want me to do. I'm expecting some tomfoolery. And I wouldn't even be shocked if they busted out a different quarterback. Like on some...
I don't think they're going to do that. I think Arnold's been too good for him so far. Like because he hasn't turned the ball over. He's been dynamic is maybe not the right word. Yeah.
They've played nobody that likes tackling. Like that
Baylor's defense is pretty bad. Yeah.
And Baylor is a solid team in the Big 12. They beat SMU. That's a good win. I don't know what Baylor did yesterday.
They beat an FCS team by 5 touchdowns, I believe.
But
Baylor's currently 71st in SP Plus defense.
Yeah,
71st.
But based on how explosive their offense is, they're going to win games in the Big 12. You know, like they'll be a fine little team that can be exciting here and there. But that game just gives me the impression that they're not just going to say, like, our offensive line is good and they can beat your defensive line straight up. We're just going to hand it off and have Jackson Arnold run zone read keepers. That will get him killed. That will get stifled very quickly. They might pop off a run or two here and there because they're talented. Michigan did.
And I think they will. But
I'm expecting some tomfoolery from Hugh Freeze. And I'm assuming OU is probably thinking the same thing. Brent Venables is going to be prepared. This defense will be prepared. But if Jackson Arnold has a good day, it's because OU has an awful day at the office. Because I just don't see it from a passing standpoint, him being capable of making the defense feel like they have to be honest. Like, is he going to run or pass? Like, no, he's going to run.
I'm also expecting some tomfoolery, as you would put it, but I don't know if it's necessarily in the passing game. I think Hugh Freeze knows what he has there, and I don't think that you can put more on Jackson Arnold's shoulders to, like, diagnose things and make big throws, because you can make it easy on him as, like, hey, this is a one read thing. If it's not there, then run. But the thing is, OU already knows that that's the thing, and I don't think Jackson Arnold has shown a capability at this point of taking on more than that. So where there's going to be tomfoolery, I'm assuming it's going to be in the run game. They're probably going to throw a lot of different run concepts at OU that are similar to what they've shown so far, but have some pretty big deviations from what they've shown so far too, in hopes that they're going to be able to pop off Jackson Arnold for, like, some long runs. I think that's where it's mostly going to be. And then in the hopes that they're able to pop those off, then that kind of backs OU off a little bit, makes the reads a little bit cleaner for Jackson's one read and thing. So I think that's where OU being imposing their will on the lines of scrimmage, especially from the defensive side of the ball, is going to be really important, because that's the thing with a running game plan, is that you can stop it before it even starts just by beating your guy up front a lot of the time. And so I'm curious to see where that goes. But what if, like, just, you know, from a college football fan's perspective right now, this is one thing that I think the transfer portal and NIL era has given us. What a fun game that is next week. Jackson Arnold, like, you know, Jackson Arnold had the worst season for an OU quarterback in 2 generations, essentially. He's a lot of people's, like, idea now of just, like, a failed OU quarterback. And we get to see him less than a year later, after he played his last game at OU for a different team, coming into Owen Field, playing in Norman, and also, you know, for a top 25 program, a program that's won a national championship more recently than OU. That is a blast. I fully expect that game next week to be just as crazy as the Michigan game, like from a crowd perspective, maybe even crazier. When Auburn's offense is on the field, I expect Owen Field to be absolutely raucous.
I would imagine there's going to be more venom with this one. And look, I never try to tell fans how they should be fans. Like, that's not. I don't like doing that. I don't like when people tell me to do what I should feel or how I should act, because I'm already an adult, so I'm going to act like an adult. But if I'm emotional about something, that should be okay too. But there are going to be fans that don't like Jackson Arnold. It's not his fault he wasn't very good. You know, it's not his fault. It's not his fault that his head coach hired probably the worst offensive coordinator in school history, if not like the last 20 or 30 years. It's not his fault. It didn't work out. OU got a quarterback in John Mateer. It ended up working out, as of right now, the best for both parties. But this is football. It's competition. There's going to be more venom than the Michigan game, which was just kind of like, we're all excited just to be here, and this is a celebration of the sport. 2 blue blood programs, 2 great helmets colliding with each other, fan bases that don't really get to ever see each other. You know, it's like a first time. Auburn, you know, on the other hand, he's already played them, was fortunate last year in conference. But with Jackson Arnold, the last thing you want, and this is, to me, Grant, has more to do with what we saw last year. Last year was just nothing but, if you have any type of connection to the program, you're going to have your selfie moment against OU. You're going to get to take pictures on the field after you beat this bad Oklahoma team. You're going to get to have the best game of your college career, Theo Weiss, against your former team that you felt slighted you in your final year as an Oklahoma Sooner, which led you to go to Missouri. OU already kind of exercised one of those demons already a little bit because Sharon Moore is a former Sooner. He didn't get to take his selfies with his family on the field he used to play college football at when he was an Oklahoma Sooner. Can't let that happen with Jackson Arnold. You know, like, as great as we're feeling right now about this team and the trajectory of this team, it could go south pretty quickly if they lay an egg against Auburn and Jackson Arnold looks good doing it. That would be pretty demoralizing.
Very much so. But on the other side of the coin, because college football is so much about narratives, and when we think about, like, when seasons are over and then we think about them in retrospect, we think about it so much in terms of like storybooks and like what was the story of this season. And so if Jackson Arnold comes in here next week and has a great game and looks like the Jackson Arnold that he has looked like in the first 3 games at Auburn, like, that's obviously going to be very demoralizing for this team. But on the other side of the coin, if he comes in and OU's defense makes him look like the Jackson Arnold of last season, I think you can add that to another thing in OU's favor of this season of like, man, maybe this is just kind of the season that we all want it to be, where it's because it's going to be super satisfying if that's the case. If Arnold comes in and turns it over 3 or 4 times and OU wins by double digits, it's going to be, what, from the Water Boy, the guy squeezing his nipples like at the, from the water. That's what Farmer Fran. That's what it's going to be like for me. And so, I'm pretty excited about that. And I think
real quick, I think one thing that probably will get glossed over, maybe someone will bring this up. I'm not 100% sure because I'm trying to look it up right here, which is great podcasting. But let's see. Denton Geyer and Little Elm High School played each other. They played each other in 2022 in John Mateer's senior year. So I'm assuming that Jackson Arnold beat the living crap out of John Mateer's team in high school. So John Mateer isn't just simply like a non-connected party to the Jackson Arnold return to Norman experience. He's probably got something up his sleeve too of like, oh, this dude had like, because Little Elm is just not a very good football program, whereas Denton Geyer is just filled with like D1 prospects. Peyton Bowen was Jackson Arnold's teammate. So that's another wrinkle too. Peyton Bowen, I'm sure, is like, love you, man, but boy, last year sucked, and I'm sorry, but you're going to be the victim for that one. I wouldn't be surprised if John Mateer's like, he had a much better team than me in high school. I'm going to show him that I'm better. Like, I expect John Mateer to be fired up for this one just because of that high school connection.
And that's the thing. I mean, Mateer's clearly has a little bit of FU in his game too, which is obviously a whole lot of fun. So, all right, I think that's actually a pretty good place for us to stop. I think that was, I love talking OU football with you. Like, that's the fun thing about this is that we could easily go for another hour and a half easily. So like, that's the one thing that you and I have in common. We're just crazy about this stuff, and it's just a massive part of our lives. And so, man, I really appreciate you coming on here. This was just a little bit too much fun.
Of course. Thank you, Grant. Thank you for letting me co-host. It's filling for Lee. Again, I've said it a zillion times, like, West of Everest has always been my favorite OU podcast. So it's always fun to not just listen and be friendly with you guys on a personal level, so we can kind of go back and forth on each other's takes from each other's shows. But, in a spot duty respect, it's always fun to kind of like slide into this one and hopefully entertain, inform as much as I can some of your listeners and not annoy them as much. Lee will be back soon, so I'm looking forward to Lee getting back on West of Everest. But yeah, it was fun to jump on.
Sure. Tell the people where they can hear you, where they can read your stuff before we hop off.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, probably too late, I've started contributing to Sooners on SI, so check that out. That's John Hoover, Ryan Chapman, Ryan Aber, Carson Field. It's a awesome Dynamite team. They do an excellent job. They're doing the brunt of the work, and I'm just helping out where I can. So look for like 3 or 4 stories a week from me there. Of course, through the Keyhole, you can listen to that anywhere you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, wherever it is. We've got a Patreon page, patreon.com/throughthekeyhole, where we put extra podcasts like our post-game show, for instance. That's only exclusively heard on our Patreon page. We love our patrons, by the way. Thank you. If you also listen to West of Everest. And of course, keyholepod.com, which is the free website where Alan and Peyton put some written stuff down there as well. So we try to do a lot. We like OU football just like you guys do. We try to just show it off in other ways as well, and we have fun doing it.
Indeed, and please do subscribe or to the Patreon for them. I know Lee and I have been patrons for multiple years now. They put out good stuff. Through the Keyhole is also my favorite OU football podcast. So we have.
Thank you.
I love listening to that stuff, and especially when all of you guys are on at the same time. You guys all need to be on at the same time more. It's always a very lively discussion. I appreciate it. So.
Checks in the mail, Grant.
Oh, perfect, perfect. I did my duty then. I appreciate that. So. All right. Well, again, I'll thank Brady for being on, and we will be back on the midweek pod to preview OU's second massive game this season, their first SEC game of the year against Auburn. Jackson Arnold coming back to Norman. Excited for that one. So until then, for Brady Trantham of Through the Keyhole, I am Grant Benson. Thank you so much for listening to West of Everest. We'll see you guys in the middle of this upcoming week. Thanks.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe to the show. And if you want to help us spread the word, please leave us a 5-star review. And also, tell all of your friends who are OU fans about West of Everest. You can listen to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and SoundCloud.